up. Can you hear us now?
Oh, shoot.
No one can hear us? Oh, terrible.
I ruined the webinar. Maybe flash
now. We're back.
Yes, we're back. Yay! See,
All
it was just such a deep question. We had to really screw that all
really
up.
An important question.
All right, and I want you to go back to handling that question, Dave.
Sure. Amazing. So we'll go 5 minutes. This was going to be a 50-minute webinar. We'll go 55 minutes to account for the time that was lost with the microphone switch. So picking up where we left off, Carolyn was saying one of the nice things about this course is we're not going to be forcing you to lie to yourself. I experienced one of the sort of recurring traumas of when I was trying to do pure abundance manifestation was I would be like, all right, I have $100,000 in my bank account. I have $100,000 in my bank account. And I would look at my bank account and be like, well, I'm a bad magician. Clearly, that was not successful. So, Hala, this is a beautiful question. There are very useful parts of abundance practice. We'll be doing some of them, like learning to recognize the part of reality that lacks nothing is useful for money magic. It's one part of it. So the question is, how do you access that kind of state where you're feeling zero scarcity, total absence of lack, while there's nothing in your bank account? And the simplest route to that actually is Carolyn's invention. It's existential kink. And it's a simple way to describe it is learning to feel experientially the abundance of lack. Feel and be absolutely overwhelmingly fed by starving, so financially speaking, in a certain way. And I'll let you, if you want to describe any more of the practices connected to that, you can. It's an amazing question.
Oh boy, yeah, that's the whole, well, there is an email that I sent out about what to do with the feeling of scarcity. So I kind of feel like if I launch into a whole EK explanation, it might eat up the rest of our time, Dave. But yeah, there's when I was working, first beginning to do this, I noticed that there was an incredible, Fritz Perls said that fear is just excitement without breath. And I noticed that I had all of these intense sensations that I would label as anxiety or humiliation associated with my empty bank account and my scramble to pay the bills each month. And I discovered that there was a way of dropping into my body and allowing those sensations to be present without judgment, that I could actually experience them as really intense pleasure, sometimes even as the sexual pleasure. And that there was an alchemy that I could do with that, where suddenly it was like my scarcity was no longer this horrible thing that I hated and wanted to get rid of as soon as possible, but rather I recognized that there was a deep pleasure in and of itself right there for me. And in recognizing that, there was a deep shift in my view of myself and the world, where I realized that rather than being a scarce person, as I had thought, I was actually an incredibly fulfilled person. I had all of this pleasure in all of this monthly game of proving myself worthy to live another and it was just so excellent. And once I stopped judging those sensations and just allowed myself to have them and really enjoy them, I think I spent about a month just really savoring my amazingly, humiliating lack of money and just loving it so much. And I just got so pleased with it that then, I don't know, all of these ideas started coming to me for things that I could do to make money. And suddenly those ideas no longer seemed dissonant with my identity, because I had that identity as a scarce person. But now I had this experience of myself as a very fulfilled person. And those creative ideas to earn money, I was like, well, yeah, I'm a fulfilled person and these creative ideas are totally great. I can do this. And so it was what usually happens with magic in my experience is that it wasn't that something rained down from the sky. It was that my perception radically shifted. And that enabled me to take advantage of opportunities that had been in front of me all along, but that I was previously blind to. So in the course, we will talk much more about existential kink. Some things that some folks have been wondering, been asking like, oh, how is this course different from Influence, for example, which is one of the other main courses that I teach. It's very different from Influence. We do talk about existential kink in pretty much all of my courses, just because I find it a key component.
Smooths everything out so much.
It smooths. But there's plenty of practices and discussions we'll be having in money that, if we talked about them in Influence, they would take up the whole of Influence. So they're in money.
All right, next question.
Yes.
So one simple question, are there going to be any spells involved, or is this just motivational speaking? Love this question. The course is going to be some kind of content, a ton of practices. The practices are going to be some spells, rituals, ceremonies, meditations, and then also some actual real life interpersonal money practices, which are sort of the most intimidating.
Very sensational.
Very sensational. Good. There's a bunch of questions actually more about banishment. There is an email that we sent out last week with some stories of the banishment of money from the spirit realm. Quickly, I'll say someone asked, can we identify with the parts of ourselves that have been banished in a way to connect with money? The answer is totally yes. That's one of the enormous benefits of working with money as a banished spirit is we're not quite banished because we still have some over there, but we experience as human beings some sort of taste of having lost homeland, like a perfect unitive homeland. And that experience gives us a very, very direct route towards deep empathy and intimacy with money. And when you start to work with that feeling specifically, it helps in a really profound way to come to terms with the harsh realities of our incarnation. Other people are asking, if there's a lot about the banished things. One correction I'll make, Claire, I like what you said. It is in fact learning valuable lessons from suffering, but it's not just learning lessons from suffering. It's learning to taste the enjoyment of the suffering itself.
It's sadomasochistic.
Yeah. It's
sadomasochistic pleasure. That's why it's called existential kink. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say about it. In fact, there's lots more to say about that. But it's not just looking for the silver lining or learning a lesson. It's really like, oh, this sensation, it's like the human mind decides how to experience sensation as pleasure or pain. And basically, this is learning about how to experience much more of the sensations in life as pleasure, allowing ourselves to receive that pleasure. And that tends to have this amazing pattern interrupt effect, where we no longer feel unconsciously compelled to keep repeating the behavior that leads to the painful sensations, because we've allowed ourselves to fully receive and get off on those. And then a new horizon tends to open up where we're willing to let ourselves have some other sensations. Are there other questions we should get to?
Why was money banished? Also, longer email about that. But she was banished because she gave humans a gift that went against the dictates of the other spirits and deities.
Very close to what Prometheus did.
Specifically your dad. Is lack of enjoyment / guilt / shame over the way we receive money, like a job or spouse or trust, the main block to increased wealth? Beautiful question, Amanda. I'm hesitant to say that it's the main block because money is complicated and so it depends on the person. But I will say that guilt and shame about mode of receiving anything is for sure a significant block to receiving it. That said, here's something tricky about money is like the way to get rid of shame about money is not just to try to push the shame away. And especially we could say shame about receiving. Like you have a sort of natural resistance to acquiring wealth. That's a really good thing. That's a really good place to start. That's not just because of inherited conditioning. It's not just because of limiting beliefs. It's because you love people. It's because you can intuit that you're taking something from them. Now, the important aspect of taking and the pain of taking when it comes to working with money magic is that empathy is reflective, or it has a kind of fractal shape. So if you're resistant to taking from people, that means you're resistant to the experience of taking in any context. And that means that your empathy that is trying to hold money at bay so you don't have to take from people is also subconsciously going to be active in you giving to people. In other words, the cap of you could say codependency or like primitive empathy to receiving ends up also turning around and preventing the amount that you could give in a very concrete way. Meaning, if you don't receive a certain amount of money from people, you cannot then give it to others. Now, I'm not saying that actually, I will say that. The only reason money is good is because you can get rid of it for other things. That's literally, money it has no purpose except to be spent or given. And so when you receive it, it's impossible to give it without having received it. And when you receive it, it's in a sort of a state of stasis until it's given, which isn't a bad thing. Because of that, you'd say the full expression of empathy has to include a certain kind of willingness to consume and like a surrender to the reality of cannibalism. Boundaries are another way to say that.
We talk about cannibalism, the happier I get. Okay.
Oh my God, that's amazing, Isabel. We have to talk about that.
Where?
I have a huge issue. This isn't even a question. I have a huge issue accepting money from others, such as men, because I don't want them to feel superior. Oh my God, yes. I'm so glad. So there's a whole section in the money course that's about the power dynamics of giving and receiving money. Because when you receive money from someone, of the reciprocal aspect of the money spirit, you are in fact being enslaved in a certain way. That's happening. Now, there's a reverse power dynamic that's also happening, but the power dynamics of one person being over another, like controlling another in a certain way, are very present throughout all financial transactions. And it's, along with the consumptive aspect of money, it's one of the areas that we tend to have the most trouble looking at, but we can all kind of intuit it under the surface. So we'd say coming to full terms with the fact that all of society is essentially interlocking dom-sub relationships on different layers is a side effect of doing this kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie likes my gestures. Surrender to the reality of cannibalism. Yes. Without losing the compassion at the heart of it. This is the thing, is you're not just, this is incomplete magical work if you're just okay cannibalizing people. There's a big part of your heart that finds that tragic. So learning to surrender to the constant grief of financial transactions, if you're an empath, is a kind of, it's a necessary road to working with money consciously. We have time for one more question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, one more question. Carolyn, I've taken all but one of your courses. Can you tell us if the tools you give us in influence are similar to this course? For instance, in influence, we could choose money or choose to or love to concentrate on. I chose the money piece and it worked. I received 2 gifts from a settlement to a home sale, but I spent it all in 2 years. Will this course do something different? In this course, do you do something different so that I don't do that again? I adore you, by the way, Vanessa from Montana.
Oh, Vanessa, thank you. So, yes. So in influence, we work with planetary deities, and some folks work with Venus for love magic, like relationship magic. Some folks work with Jupiter for wealth magic. I've worked with Jupiter a long time myself, and it's great. What the issue that you just spoke to, the like, hey, I had all this come in and then I just spent it all. So that's the funny thing about Jupiter is like very into expansion, but doesn't really have, doesn't super go into the constricting or the structuring side so much. What I find really fascinating about this work directly with the money spirit, and we actually have this whole mythological genealogy for the money spirit, where we won't go into the whole depth of it, but basically this sense that money is the daughter of Venus and Jupiter. And of course, if you are familiar with Greek and Roman mythology, you know that Venus is the daughter of Jupiter. So that's kind of messed up. And yeah, it is. We'll talk more about that. And also, working directly with money has this range of possibilities where, as Dave was speaking to, there's like the whole roller coaster ride of learning how to be really centered with her and learning about saving and structuring and giving and exchanging and sort of the whole range of money actions apart from just the having it come in. So that's one of the things that I find really worthwhile. And of course, influence.
This course does have a financial projection spreadsheet at one point.
Yes, there's so much in influence that will not be in this course, and there's so much in this course that it's not an influence. It's hard for me to summarize for you, so I apologize, but I hope that gives you some idea. Yeah.
That was so. Yeah, influence is an amazing precursor to this course, especially because of the existential kink piece. And do you do resentment stuff in influence?
A bit.
Yeah. The work around resentments and existential kink broadly and just the ritualistic foundations, like working with a spirit or deity. Super amazing foundation. I don't do a lot of work with Jupiter or Venus specifically, and there's a certain kind of why I'm called to work with money as such a central spirit is that Jupiter and Venus you can experience incredible benefits from working with because they're eternal entities, and we grow up in a culture that doesn't have existing associations with them. And so it's a good start, and they are eternal, but there's a certain kind of accelerated magic that's possible working with money specifically because it's a being who we already know intimately. And because it's a being that's at the heart of so much of the shadow and some of the light of our culture, honestly, like some of what's possible with capitalism is quite beautiful and horrible, but also beautiful. On a side note, in response to Chris, do we also look at the positive polarity of this? 100%. Yeah. Half of the course is working with the philanthropic nature of the money spirit, of accessing gratitude, of learning to extend gratitude into all areas of life in very concrete practices, because money is kind of just a gratitude note in a certain way. You have to do both. So it's going to be the forward momentum of the course is on the bicycle pedals of the absolute gorgeous beauty of money and the horrific tragedy of it simultaneously. Broadly, we'll pause there so we don't get lost too much. I think we have time for one brief question, and then we got to transition.
Do you want to find one?
We got, so the last one.
There's one about Babylon.
Oh my God. So I leveled up this year spiritual. We'll do this one. So Heather, do you have a spell for manifesting a space money course when my bank account doesn't reflect this possibility? Thank you for the share. You guys are magic. Yes, Heather. I'll just say this quite honestly, part of the tragedy of money is what we're talking about. The necessity of boundaries in the dualistic world is in fact a tragic thing. And so Carolyn and I had to wrestle a lot with that, working with this course and coming up with the price point. It ended up being what felt like the spirit was asking for, $200 a month for 5 months. If that doesn't currently reflect, if your bank account doesn't currently reflect that kind of option, I'll say two things. One ability is that you're not meant to take the course right now, and that's a very real possibility. In fact, if your bank account does reflect the possibility of taking the course, if you have a bunch of extra cash, that does not mean that you should take the course. You should take this course basically only under one circumstance, regardless of financial situation, which is that you feel a call to do this work, to work deeply, intimately with the spirit of money. You'll experience it as some version of her calling to you. If you feel that is probably meant to happen in some way, if you don't take the course. I don't care how much money you have available. In terms of if that's currently hard for you financially, I'll say two things. One possibility is that you're meant to go through the experience of that kind of discomfort of not signing up for it as a sort of medicinal experience to open you up to the next layer of money. The experience of not signing up for the course, not being able to, might be the necessary transformation in your life right now. That's totally an option. And one of the other options, is one of my favorite parts of working with the money spirit. We're going to go 2 minutes over. I decided. So the reason I got launched into the money path, this sort of work, was because I wanted to take a course that I couldn't afford. That doesn't always end well for me. It happens too. And the most transformative part of the experience for me was, obviously you have to trade something, whether or not it's a loan or not. You have to trade something generally in order to receive money. You have to at least trade gratitude. And so if it feels like there isn't quite enough money available for something, but you feel like it's supposed to happen, then the inner meditation that sends you into is feeling, okay, where is there value, treasure in my soul or life that's worth at least that much? And so this was when I was like, I wanted to buy this $24,000 course. I had like $40. I was like, okay, where do I have treasure inside myself? It was not a fast process, but over a couple of kind of agonizing weeks, I discovered I actually had a shitload of internal treasure that I could trade in various ways, like some of them, some of them just gratitude, that I would not have ever gotten to shine the light on if I hadn't had that sort of external excuse. So if you're meant to take the course, but money isn't quite reflected there right now, I would do an internal meditation, and you can do it with the spirit of money, like closing your eyes, visualizing her, and then asking her, one, are you meant to take this course? And then two, if you're not sure how the money is going to work out, what does she want from you, or where does she see treasure in you that would allow it to be possible?
And I just want to say that often, like Dave is mentioning, like often that process of finding what you have to trade or offer that would be valuable usually is uncomfortable. For me, it was extremely uncomfortable when I began offering services to people, coaching or reading, or hey, I'll babysit for you. Hey, I'll walk your dog for you. Hey, I'll clean your house for you. You know, like all of these things where I'll edit your dissertation, just whatever you want to do. It was so uncomfortable to ask, people, hey, can we make a deal? And it was so uncomfortable to, especially the part that was, closest to my deeper talents, like coaching, writing, to receive money in exchange for these things that came so easily to me, and was really, really scary. It was like this taboo territory, and I really like the option of using your desire for this course as a chance to have some conversations with some people in your life and see, like, hey, what can I offer you that would be worth your while? If you feel the call. If you actually feel the call, not think that it's the right course to take, but like if you feel the inner call, then that could be a beautiful practice. There, it is an immensely awesome course. It's an awesome course, but it's not for everyone. Not for everyone. Okay, we have to close. We'll talk a little bit about the money course itself, where to find it. Would you post the link one more time? Good. Okay, so like we said, we've shared a ton of practices already in the email and some different frameworks to start working with in our email series about the course. If you're not meant to take this course now, I highly encourage you to start working with those. For those of you who haven't read the emails, this is the very simple practice of closing your eyes, visualizing the spirit of money in front of you, however she appears, and simply conversing with her is an incredible start, especially as a daily practice. There's no shortcut to developing long-term intimacy. It just has to be done that way. I'll say, for those of you who are kind of on the fence about joining the course, please don't join the course feel like it's like a quick fix for money stuff. We're teaching some fast money magic, but this course is intense. Money magic is intense. There's gnarliness in it. There's grief. There has to be like an actual commitment and a real willingness to dive into all of the different aspects, from the very light to the extremely
And it takes work. We ask for 15 to 30 minutes a day of daily practice from people from the course. So make sure if you're going to sign up that you feel an actual call and have the sort of commitment or surrender to back up that call. And if you don't, there's zero shame in it. Just please start working with money right away, because it's an important relationship in your life, whether we like it or not. We're sort of like in an arranged marriage with money just by being incarnated in the time. So like maybe work a little bit with your partner.
He was talking about being on a date with money, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's an arranged marriage.
Yeah, that's what it is. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for the brilliant questions. And for some of you, we'll be seeing you in the Facebook group.
Yay! Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night.